Sunday night, and it's time for the fix.
Our big hitter is Transport Minister Dr. Blade Nzimande. Efforts to clean up this department has been resisted, so much so that the new Prasa board chair was hijacked. Just how far will those who are implicated go to continue with their impunity?
It's wrong to think that state capture happened in the last 10 years. It predates that.
In the look ahead, we unpack the shadow state and, more importantly, its implications for the democratic project. And in the cool stuff, playwright and poet Napo Mashiane talks about her art to restore the dignity of those who were raped in her play, Kwezi, Say My Name. The fix starts now.
This is The Fix, where every Sunday night, without fear or favour, we question the big hitters. We look ahead to tell you what matters, and beyond politics, we look at the cool stuff South Africans are talking about. We begin with this week's big hitter. Joining us now is Transport Minister Dr. Blade Nzimande. Dr. Nzimande, a very good evening. Welcome to The Fix.
Good evening, Karima, both to your viewers and listeners, and thanks for inviting me.
Now, you are responsible for something around close to 13 what we call state-owned companies or enterprises. Among the best known are Prasa, Sanral and AXA. We've seen you take action, for example, on Prasa. You've put in place a board, an acting board. But we've also seen efforts to resist the cleanup. Let's quickly take a listen to the spokesperson of the acting board of Prasa, Kanyisile Kweyama, who was, of course, hijacked and bundled into a car shortly after you appointed her. Let's listen to Matata Tsedu, her spokesperson.
The modus operandi is the same. And I think everybody is aware that Prasa is in the middle of huge investigations around corruption, and the new board that Ms. Kweyama chairs has been acting very actively against a number of deals that had already been concluded. So you can just see that this disruption of the highway to the feeding trough, it's not being accepted by some people, which is why we think that the attack on her doesn't make any other sense, because there is no financial gain that has been made out of the attack itself. So from where the family sits, this is a scare tactic to try and make sure she stops whatever it is that she's doing. I think what South Africans really need to understand is the depth of corruption that has sunk into state institutions, and all these new boards that have been appointed and that are trying to clean up are faced with a fight back from those who have been feeding illegally.
That is, of course, Minister Matata Tsedu speaking there after your acting board chair, Kanyisile Kweyama, was bundled into a boot. Now, that's a pretty drastic thing to do. You've released a statement shortly after that, and you described it as an act of intimidation. You also said the perpetrators must be brought to book. What do you think is it that scares those who've used these entities, who've repurposed them for the benefit of their own private gain, that they are so worried about in terms of the new people that you've begun to put in? Let's start at Prasa, for example.
I think that I agree I must start at Prasa, but I think the point of departure, which also is underlined by the Communist Party this afternoon, is that the fight back in attempts by government to clean state-owned corporation and government departments, it's a fight back against you as Karima Brown, as a South African citizen, and all South Africans. Therefore, we actually need a patriotic effort to say it's not just against President Cyril Ramaphosa or for some of those who are leading in government or in the ANC. It's actually this corruption and state capture and resistance. It's a fight against the country. Now, in Prasa, when I arrived, the first thing that struck me is that this is not really a rail operator, but an ATM of some sort.
An ATM for who?
An ATM for people that now are going to be coming out, because as I'm talking to you now, I've just been briefed very recently that disciplinary charges are going to be laid on people. And of course, the way they unfold and the way they get concluded, they are going to be able to show who are the people who are actually involved.
Are you in a position, Minister, to name those against whom disciplinary procedures are going to be brought?
Not now, Karima, you'll understand that. I would rather prefer that they get named. It's going to be soon, within the next week or two, through the official processes, rather than me as a minister coming to actually name them.
So the board will be doing this?
The board will be doing this. I fully support them. That's all that I'm willing to say. And they will come to be known, and we hope that something will also get done. And also, of course, some of the cases have already been handed over to the Hawks, because there's been extensive investigations, done at Prasa, for instance, by a group of lawyers, workmen, as well as now the matters have been handed over to the Hawks. And we hope that the Hawks are also going to go very deep into this, so that we are able to deal with the people who are supposed to be dealt with.
Now, of course, before you came, the Hawks had to literally be dragged to court by the former chair of Prasa, Dr. Popo Molefe, who's of course now the Transport Chair Board, for not doing their work. That is why Workmen's as a company was actually brought in. Is there a difference now, Minister, since there is a new head of the Hawks, in the way they are approaching investigations in terms of alleged wrongdoing when it comes to Prasa?
From the briefing that I got from the chairperson of the board, there seems to be some difference now, because the Hawks have said they themselves are going to use their own method that they use, for instance, to get into the bottom of the matter, which often other investigators do not have the power to do. So let me give you a very concrete example. The lawyers who are investigating, for instance, do not have the powers to access the Financial Intelligence Center, which the Hawks have, to be able to trace every cent that left Prasa and where did it go to. They have committed, that they are also going to do that double checking on their part, so that they are able to deal with this. But myself, I'm going to stay very focused on this, to make sure that nothing gets buried. We need to go to the bottom of this for the sake of trying to rebuild this country from the dark period out of which we're coming from.
Now, we know, for example, when you were axed from the cabinet under former President Jacob Zuma, and there was a reshuffle, we also had a new transport minister appointed, and Ms. Dudu Myeni, who was required by Parliament to come and give testimony to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee that was investigating state capture in Eskom, refused to go. But she was hurriedly made, she was kicked off the board at SAA, but hurriedly made the Transport Minister's advisor, the then Transport Minister as advisor. What has subsequently happened to her? Is she still in your employ? Have you terminated her services?
Definitely she's not in my employ. In fact, interestingly enough, the very first day I arrived there, some media was beginning to inquire. She was no longer there. And I did ask from the department as to where is she, what is happening, so that I'm not in the dark. What I was told is that there were certain outstanding issues and documentation that she was supposed to submit to the previous ministers, including qualifications, which had not yet been received. So the contract then could not be concluded. So by the time I arrived there, she was no longer there.
So you never laid eyes on her when you even stepped into the department or into the ministry?
Definitely not, and she's not there.
Now, let's move to, I mean, you wear different caps. You are also the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. You had your, Central Committee meeting today and over the weekend. You brought out a very, very strong statement where you, of course, enlightened the public that Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Enterprises, briefed the Central Committee on the cleanup. But you said also, as you said in your opening, that the cleanup endeavour is only just beginning, and as expected, given that the stakes are so high, there is now a nasty fight back by recalcitrant elements. And you're saying that there is, in fact, people implicated, such as senior SOC managers. They've taken up this issue, and under what you call a false flag of black nationalism and a pretense of fighting neoliberalism. Some of these generate fight back or degenerate fight backers have focused on Comrade Gordhan personally and has even descended into black chauvinism and racist slurs. Now, we've heard this accusation even before the fallout between yourselves and let's say President Zuma. There was this argument that the minorities are in the economic clusters, a lot of them communists, by the way, people like Rob Davies, for example. What do you make of the attack on the individual ministers who are leading the cleanup as part of the overall drive as outlined by the President in SONA? What is behind the personalization of this attack? Is it an attempt to just deflect, from the real issues? What are we seeing here?
Look, the call that I think must be made is that we must allow processes to actually get to the bottom of this. There's a Judicial Commission of Inquiry now, which the SACP was the first organization to call for. There are other processes that are taking place, like in Prasa, in ESCOM, and in other places. We are not saying we've already found people guilty, but whoever is serious about getting to the bottom of state capture, for instance, we must allow these processes to take place. We can't then be coming with what one, for want of a better word, with excuses, even before the processes start or right in the middle of the processes. Let's allow these processes to go through and see what actually comes out. Any South African who is genuine about this, as the SACP have said, we're going to support these investigations. We will do all we can to actually support the investigations. We're not going to use some kind of black chauvinist attacks, on Comrade Pravin to say it's an Indian cabal that is coming back and all those things. In fact, those things are very dangerous because they become excuses for us not to be able to get to the bottom of whatever has been problematic in our political economy at this point in time.
Okay, Minister, we have to take a short break here on The Fix. We like a contrasting view. So after the break, columnist at the Sunday Times, Peter Bruce, will join me in conversation with Dr. Nzimande as we unpack his turnaround strategy for the Transport Department.